So for the last segment of the day with Chris, we're going to break down what, how you can actually talk about charity when it comes to estate planning, and what is the best route, or, how can you best structure your estate planning for the future. We did talk about, writing it off to your spouse, which is also a strategy in how you can save money or keep that money within your family. But also, when we talk about, the future, it's important to understand how you can structure it, who you can write it off to, so on and so forth. So Chris, I also did bring up the art category, and how if art actually goes under charity. So what's the story here, Chris?
Short answer, it doesn't, right? It has to be a registered charity, and there's forms you fill in so that is noticed. What you're talking about, let me just touch on the art.
Yeah.
It's all collectively things like that are called chattels. So chattels include art, wine, vintage cars, objects of interest, antiques, antiquities, things like this. Things that the value is subjective. There's no real value at it. A Banksy painting kind of thing. Why rich people acquire these is quite simple. They can hide them. They can hide them from the state. So you often hear rich people say, "Well, I don't actually know how much money I have," and that's because most of their funds are divested into rare bottles of wine, artifacts, and art that very often isn't even displayed. It's kept in warehouses, or what we term bond house. So a lot of times governments don't even know these things are owned, or who they're owned by. And so they can't assess them for tax. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people do it. And you're quite right, it's not only in America, it's all around the world. So that's one of the main reasons. And of course, I am being a bit disingenuous to most of them, because some of them buy it for the art, but mostly it's just for to hide the asset. It's like a trust, you can't track it down.
When talking about these assets, Chris, I get where you're coming from when you say you can't really ask how much to the decimal, or to an exact value as to what someone's net worth could be when they invest in pieces like this as well. Just a quick, maybe off the topic question. What I'm just trying to understand what the purpose of doing this is. Okay, you can hide it, maybe to if something comes to worst, you can, is it to sell it and then get the money back, or is it to let it appreciate and then sell it again? What is the purpose you think this whole strategy is?
It's just to remove money from your estate regarding the tax man. It's remember, when you've got enough money to start buying these high-end items, such as a £10 million work of art, or vintage car, or wine, or something, you are trying to reduce the amount the taxman sees you with. That's it. Because if you invest that money, you will pay capital gains tax eventually. You will pay, tax on income accumulated in that. You will pay tax when you die. You'll pay tax if you give it to the trust. You'll pay tax when you pass it to your beneficiaries. If you have a bottle of wine in a warehouse, or a picture worth £10 million in a warehouse, they don't know it's there. And you don't care if it's worth 8 million when you die, or 15 million when you die. You just don't care, because you've saved a potential amount of tax on that. And I think that's the main attraction for certainly for the billionaires. You've got to be properly rich for that. So, that's another story. And most of us we'll never have that problem. So that's okay.
But so coming back to the charity then, Chris, what's the approach you think is best? What would you recommend?
Look, most people just give to the main big charities, right? And they've got it. All charities have a registration number, and so you leave it to the charity in your will. and it's a registered charity, and the executor fills in the appropriate paperwork, and that reduces your tax bill, or the tax rate, should I say, and your tax bill because the amount's going up. What I haven't touched on, and I want to do that quickly, is another solution or other solutions that we use. There's gifting. So every year you're allowed to gift a certain amount. And here in the UK, it's £3,000 a year, except for when there's a wedding, you can give an additional £5,000. And, you know, I usually refer to a table for these because I don't have them off my head. There's small gifts of £250. And so if you give these gifts throughout your lifetime, that can also add up and reduce your inheritance tax bill, because that doesn't fall into any inheritance tax. Okay, that's just a gift that can be given tax-free. There's another gifting, which you can gift any amount you want above the set amounts that are tax-free. However, that is then called a potential exempt transfer, or PET, as we call it. Because if let's say, you and I become close friends and I give you £100,000, right? Which is nice. If I die the day after I give you that £100,000, my estate, not you, my estate will owe £40,000 on that gift to you.
Exactly.
It's an estate. However, if I survive 7 years from that gift, 7 years, there's no estate duty on it, and it's a reducing value. So for the first 3 years of that gift, it's 100%, and then from year 4, 5, 6, 7, it goes down each year until it goes to 0. So it's a good strategy for people. Okay, you have to survive 7 years on the gift, however, but it's still okay. So what we do with a lot of people as well is we say, okay, people are generally in their 60s. We say, well, give your kids their inheritance early, because you'll survive 7 years, and then it's just out of your estate. So it's quite easy. And then you're not paying life cover, you're not doing any of this and that. It's quite a good strategy as well. So it's employed by most people.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the sooner you write it off to someone, to whoever is dearest to you or whoever you want to make sure that they're, taken care of, the sooner you write it off, and if you survive 7 years or more, basically the beneficiary doesn't have to pay any taxes on it.
Or your estate, exactly. But remember, this is going to be money that you're not going to use, right? Because if I'm gifting it to you, it's yours, it's not mine. And that brings me to a very important thing. If HMRC or the taxman gets any inkling that you controlled that gift in any way, i.e., oh, I'll give it to you, but then just give me some money back to live.
Okay.
Well, then that negates that whole thing. It's got to go, right?
Okay, so that's the catch. You can't touch it after you write it off.
No. You got to give it out, right? You can't have any control on it. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is if someone, which happens a lot here in the UK, when they retire, they sell their business. You know, it's one of the best tax efficient ways to go. And so they get a huge amount of money, let's say £1 million, right? Now, they would be entitled to business relief on that money, which is business relief taxes when they sell it. So it's a reduced tax amount. However, what they've just done now is they've taken a asset, their business, which is very tax efficient for estate planning purposes, and they've sold it and created cash and put it in their estate at 40%. So what we want to make sure is that we keep that in a business relief environment so that we still maintain, let's call it a tax wrapper. It's not the correct term, but let's call it a tax wrapper for now because it makes it easier. So there's ways we can do that. And what we do is we put that money in a business relief trust. So not only that person, when they pass it on to their second generation, but the generation after that and after that benefit from this. And we didn't get time to touch on that, but we do intergenerational transfer, because a lot of people will do estate planning to pass to their kids, but then their kids don't do estate planning for the next lump, so they get a 40% tax. So you can plan a bit further ahead on that. So look, it can get quite complicated, and it's very situational. But people need to talk about it, and I don't see enough financial advisors talking about estate planning. Well, one reason is people don't like to speak about it, but another reason is it does get complicated, and you do need special exams. You do need to understand trust. You do need to understand different laws. So if your advisor isn't talking about it, get an advisor who does, because it's important stuff. It's important.
That is important stuff, because okay, I'm just trying to see how you can benefit of your own estate and not pay taxes. So let's say hypothetically, if like you said, you give me 100,000 pounds, and you at least write it off to me, and am I able to use that without having the tax taken off after the 7 years? Or
it's yours. You can do whatever you want. You'll never owe any estate duty tax on it, because it's only on my estate, the person who gifted it to you.
So any playing around should be done after the 7 years.
Yeah. Look,
Right.
there are certain situations in trusts where the beneficiaries can be liable. But if I gift you the money, you don't worry. You just go spend it, right?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, just before we wrap up, I mean, if obviously anyone tuned in, make sure you try contact Chris from CS Jones if you want to talk about your estate planning, because this is an important time in for anyone over, I'd say 40. It is important to educate yourself on this matter. And if you are considering, if you will come to a point where you wonder what's going to happen with your assets or your estate, and if you're going to pass it on to your children, your spouse, friends or family. So make sure you get in touch with Chris if you want to. You'll find him at CS Jones, and make sure you get yourself educated. Like I said, I learned quite a bit today on this whole conversation, and I'm super excited for next week as well, Chris.
Yeah, we got to sort something out for next week. Let's get a new series going. I think I'll have a think.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, Chris. Thanks for your time again. Appreciate it.
Man, thanks, Tim. Cheers, bud.
Have a good day.